Controversial, genius, and incredibly ambitious, Kanye West is not just a musician, but a true cultural phenomenon. His name is on everyone's lips, his work constantly sparks discussions, and his actions often become the subject of criticism. Today, in one of the most popular late-night shows, Kanye will meet James Holland, a host who is never afraid to ask the sharpest questions and provoke his guests emotionally. James has gained fame for his sharp tongue and provocative topics. His show is never without cutting-edge questions that can shock and unsettle a guest. Now his target is Kanye West. In this studio, he will try not only to hear but also to understand what drives this person, who, despite constant conflicts and criticism, remains one of the most influential artists of our time. How will this conversation end? What will happen when James tries to step out of his usual role as a host and force Kanye to reveal his true thoughts? One thing is certain, viewers will not remain indifferent. The tension is palpable in the studio as the cameras roll and the audience watches in anticipation. Kanye West, the self-proclaimed genius and revolutionary artist, sits across from James Holland, the notorious talk show host known for his sharp and often cutting remarks. Both men are aware that this is no ordinary interview. It asks a battle of minds, a clash of two towering figures from different worlds, each with their own distinct vision of success and life. James begins with a sly grin, his eyes narrowing as he locks onto Kanye with a calculated gaze. He knows exactly how to push Kanye's buttons. His opening question is direct, designed to rattle the artist and draw out his emotions. Kanye, you've always said that you're the greatest artist of all time. But do you really believe that, or is it just another part of your image? I mean, does the world really need more of your ego? Kanye leans back in his chair, his face calm, almost serene. There's no sign of the explosive anger that many have come to associate with him. Instead, he speaks with a quiet intensity, choosing his words carefully. I am not here to fit into anyone's image, James. I am here to create. I am here to change things, and if that means people get uncomfortable, then so be it. The world doesn't need more of what's already out there. It needs something new, something that challenges the status quo. My music, my art, it asks a reflection of that. It asks not about ego. It asks about vision. James doesn't let up. His next question, even more pointed than the last. He asks, trying to break through Kanye's cool acts. You've alienated a lot of people with your actions, your words. You've attacked people publicly, made outrageous statements. You even ran for president. Is it fair to say you've built your career on controversy and shock value? Do you ever worry that you're sacrificing genuine connection for the sake of attention? The question hangs in the air, heavy with implication. Kanye's jaw tightens slightly, but his response is measured, almost philosophical. What's the difference between controversy and revolution, James? People are always afraid of change, of something that doesn't fit into their neat little boxes. I've always known that if you want to make a real impact, you have to be willing to break some rules. You can play it safe. And no, I don't worry about attention. I worry about whether I am doing something that matters, whether I am leaving a legacy that will inspire the next generation. For a moment, the room is silent. The audience is hanging on every word, captivated by the unexpected depth of Kanye's response. James seems momentarily taken aback by the sincerity in Kanye's tone, but quickly regains his composure. All right, let's talk about your latest project then. You've made some bold claims about your new music. You say it's going to change the game again. But after all these years of pushing boundaries, what makes this different? What's left for you to prove? Kanye smiles, a small, knowing smile that says more than words ever could. He leans forward slightly, his eyes alight with passion. It's different because it's coming from a place of truth. I am not trying to prove anything to anyone anymore. I've done that. But now, I want to show people something they've never seen before. My music is always evolving. Each project is a step forward, a new chapter. I am not here to play by anyone's rules. I am here to make my own. James raises an eyebrow, clearly intrigued but still pushing. But at what cost? Kanye, you've sacrificed relationships. even your reputation at times. Do you ever wonder if all this is worth it? Kenny's face softens for the first time in the interview. There's a brief flicker of vulnerability in his eyes, but he quickly masks it, returning to his familiar air of confidence. I've lost a lot in this journey, James, but I've gained so much more. I've found my purpose, my voice, and I've helped others do the same. I've had to make tough choices, sure, but I wouldn't change a thing. If you're going to change the world, you have to be willing to give up everything for it. For a moment, James seems to lose his edge, as if the weight of Kenny's words has caused him to reconsider his approach. He leans back in his chair, his usual sharpness replaced by something more contemplative. It sounds like you really believe in what you're doing, James says, his tone softer now. Kenny nods, his eyes unwavering. I do, and that's what scares people. Because when you believe in something that strongly, nothing can stop you. The studio is now filled with an almost tangible sense of tension. Both Kanye West and James Holland are locked in a battle of words, a game of intellectual and emotional chess. Each question from James seems to test Kenny's limits, but the rapper, for all his controversial history, remains calm and composed. But now, as the interview reaches its peak, something shifts. There is a crack in the calm, a moment that will forever change the direction of this conversation. James leans forward, his eyes narrowing as he presses on, sensing that he has found an opening. You've been through a lot, Kenny, personal struggles, public controversies, career setbacks. Do you ever feel like maybe it's all been too much, like you've crossed a line that can't be uncrossed? For a moment, Kenny is silent, the words hit harder than expected. This is the moment where the calm facade begins to falter. Kenny's expression shifts, and for a brief second, there's a flicker of something deeper in his eyes, a trace of pain, of regret. The audience can feel it, sensing the shift in the air. Kenny takes a deep breath and looks at James, his voice quieter now, almost introspective. I've crossed a lot of lines, James, but it's not the lines that matter. It's what you do after you cross them. What happens next? That's what defines you. That's what makes you who you are. His voice wavers, but only slightly. I am not perfect. I've made mistakes, but I've also learned from T. And what I've learned is this: you can't let anyone else define your journey. Not the critics, not the fans, not the headlines. It's your life. You have to own it. James is taken aback by this moment of honesty. The Kanye West he has been challenging, the persona of the provocative artist who thrives on controversy, is suddenly not the Kenny in front of him. This Kenny is raw, vulnerable, a man who has faced the consequences of his actions and is now confronting them with an unexpected clarity. But James, ever the provocateur, can't let go of his need to push further. And what about the people you've hurt along the way, the relationships that were damaged, the people who were left in the wake of your decisions? Do you ever regret the way you've treated people? The question lands like a punch. Kenny's jaw clenches, and for a moment, his usual calm slips away. He stands up, pacing for a. His voice, when he speaks again, is steady, but there is a storm beneath the surface. I've hurt people, James, I know that, but the hardest part isn't the damage you cause. The hardest part is realizing that sometimes you have to lose people to find yourself. And yeah, that sucks. It's painful, but you have to be willing to lose what's comfortable to gain something real. You can't let the fear of loss hold you back from becoming who you need to be. His eyes lock with James's, a silent challenge in them. For a moment, the studio is silent, the weight of Kenny's words hanging in the air. The tension is thick, the audience is on the edge of their seats, hanging on every word. This is no longer just an interview. This has become a battle of ideologies, of what it means to live authentically, to be true to oneself, even at great personal cost. James, ever the professional, seems to sense that he has reached the limit of what he can push Kenny to reveal. The fight has shifted. It's no longer about getting under Kenny's skin. It's about understanding him. He pauses, looks at Kenny with a more thoughtful expression, and speaks more slowly now, his voice softer. It's clear you've changed, Kenny. You've learned things along the way that have shaped who you are today. But do you think that asks enough? Is there redemption in all of this? Or are you still searching for something more? Kenny stares at him for a long moment, his eyes unwavering. And then, with a finality that echoes through the studio, he answers, "Redemption isn't something you find in the eyes of others. It asks something you find in yourself. And maybe, just maybe, I am not done searching yet." James, ever the professional, seems to sense that he has reached the limit of what he can push Kenny to reveal. The fight has shifted. It asks no longer about getting under Kenny's skin. It asks about understanding him. He pauses, looks at Kenny with a more thoughtful expression, and speaks more slowly now, his voice softer. It asks clear, "You've changed, Kenny. You've learned things along the way that have shaped who you are today. But do you think that asks enough? Is there redemption in all of this? Or are you still searching for something more?" Kenny stares at him for a long moment, his eyes unwavering. And then, with a finality that echoes through the studio, he answers, "Redemption isn't something you find in the eyes of others. It asks something you find in yourself. And maybe, just maybe, I am not done searching yet. But I know this, I am not afraid of the journey anymore. I am not afraid of what it takes to get to the truth. And that asks what makes all of this worth it." He takes a deep breath, and with a slight smile, he adds, "And I wouldn't change a thing." The room falls silent again. There asks a moment of reflection, of understanding. The storm of words has passed, and what asks left is a man who has laid bare his soul for the world to see. The audience is left to digest what they've just witnessed. This wasn't just an interview. It was a revelation. James Holland, for all his provocations, can't help but nod in acknowledgment. He has faced a side of Kanye West that no one expected, a side that isn't defined by ego, controversy, or headlines, but by something deeper, something more human. And in that moment, James realizes that Kenny's journey is far from over. It has only just begun. But there is a mutual respect, an unspoken acknowledgement that both men have come to terms with something profound. As Kenny stands up to leave, there is a moment of quiet. He turns to James, offering a brief, sincere nod. It asks not a gesture of defeat or submission, but one of understanding. Kenny has faced the questions, the criticism, and the probing into his personal life, and he has answered them in his own way, with honesty, strength, and the wisdom that only comes from living through the storms he has weathered. James, watching Kenny walk toward the door, can't help but reflect on the conversation they've just had. He realizes that the Kanye West he thought he knew, the arrogant, controversial figure, is only one layer of a much more complex individual. There asks something undeniably compelling about Kenny's journey. It asks a journey of self-discovery, of constant reinvention, and the interview ends, but the echoes of their conversation linger. The studio lights dim, but the conversation doesn't truly stop. Kenny's words have made an impact, not just on James, but on the audience as well. The show may be over, but the questions remain. What is the cost of greatness? What does it truly mean to live authentically? And how far are we willing to go to find the truth? As Kenny leaves the building, the world will continue to watch him, waiting, questioning, and, in some cases, still doubting. But for Kanye West, the journey is far from finished. He has come to understand that the real battle is not with the world, but with himself. And as long as he is willing to keep searching, to keep challenging, and to keep pushing forward, he will continue to redefine what it means to be an artist, a visionary, and a human being. In the end, the story of Kanye West is not one of simple controversy, but of transformation. A story of a man who dared to be different, who dared to break the rules, and who, in the process, found something greater than fame. He found himself.